are doing well today. Thank you for joining us, and I just kind of want to give you a brief overview of what we'll be covering today. Today we're going to take a little bit deeper look and get a better understanding of the riteSCAN sales order picking enhancements that have been recently released. So we're going to take a look at how riteSCAN can really streamline that picking process for you within your operations, as well as increase your picking accuracy with bin serial and lot validation, and really ultimately how that's going to make a more efficient picking process within your operations. So at the end of the webinar, you'll also have the opportunity to ask questions. To introduce myself, my name is Ryan Winnicky. I'm an implementation specialist with riteSCAN. So as we're going through this presentation, if anyone experiences technical issues, can't hear me or something like that, feel free to send a message on the chat and we'll try to get that resolved for you right away. Also, as we're going through the presentation, feel free to submit questions as you think of them or something comes up. And then at the very end, we'll review all those questions and make sure we get you your answers to those questions as well. So let's get started here. We're going to get started with the webinar. So if you're not familiar with riteSCAN, I believe most of you today are pretty familiar with riteSCAN, but there's a few out there that aren't. So we were founded in 2006 and we're actually located out of central Minnesota. So riteSCAN, really what we do is we provide software solutions to automate data collection for small to medium-sized manufacturers and distributors around the globe. We're in about 10 countries right now. And really we try to keep to a core competency with our products. We try to provide smart, simple, and seamless solutions. We have two products, riteSCAN Mobile Warehouse for Syspro, so that's what we're going to be talking about today, as well as RiteTime, which is a labor data collection system. And both of these, really what we do is leverage information and technology in real time to optimize the efficiency and sharpen our customers' competitive edge out in the warehouse. So let's get right into it and talk about Mispicks. So Mispicks can drastically impact your profitability as well as reduce customer satisfaction and frustrate your employees as well out in the operations, whether it's supervisors or pickers and things like that. According to a study by Intermec in 2012, a single mispick costs the warehouse on average about $22. So it may not seem like much, but really over the course of a year, that really can add up. And that survey actually indicated that the cost of mispicks in a single distribution center on average can cost about $389,000 per year. So it really adds up over time, and it leads to a loss, quite a great loss within your operations. So it's really important to streamline your order picking process and increase that accuracy at the same time while you're increasing your efficiency out in your warehouse. So evaluating these processes and implementing a simple technology can really result in fast improvements in your sales order picking processes out in the warehouse, and riteSCAN can be very helpful to do so. So given the high cost of mispicks, it's really no wonder that companies really have adopted what we call this perfect order metric as a KPI. If you're not familiar with the perfect order metric, really what it is it's made up of 4 components to derive this metric. It's the orders that are delivered on time, the orders that are complete, the orders that are damage-free, and the orders with accurate documentation. So perfect order performance is really a key driver in a lot of these distribution scenarios to try to get their KPI up. riteSCAN can really help our customers achieve that higher perfect order metric through data validation and making sure that the correct items are being shipped out to your customers to get you closer towards that perfect order metric. The data validation really begins with the use of barcodes throughout the warehouse picking operations. You know, a lot of you may have barcodes already in place for a lot of this. Others may be working towards that, but barcodes can really help that validation of not only the stock codes, but the locations that inventory is being pulled from, the lot numbers that are being sent to customers, serial numbers, and much more, really improving the operator's picking performance, as well as the accuracy to stop errors before they get downstream to the customer or to the ERP system. We want to alleviate those errors ahead of time and cut them off right within the picking process. So you'll notice here, you can see an example of a bin barcode having your pallet racking barcoded with those bin locations, as well as a typical stock code barcode, which may include a lot number or a serial number and things like that on it to validate that data as well. So let's talk about how those validations take place in riteSCAN. riteSCAN has really built in these error messages to prevent picking errors. For example, when the operator scans or keys in an item number that's not found on the sales order, they're going to be presented with an error right away that says this item isn't on the order, so you can't go ahead and pick that. You know, if you're using manual processes today, there's no way to necessarily go through that validation process to really prevent an operator from picking the wrong item. So that's one of the key drivers for increasing that accuracy. Another error that an operator may see is when they're trying to pick a stock code that's assigned to a different bin location than what they're expected to be pulling it from. So it's going to warn that operator if the line that they're trying to pick is actually picking it from a different location. And what this does is really keeps your inventory levels in line. So that way, when operators are out on the warehouse floor, they're picking inventory from the correct locations, and they always know that those locations have the correct inventory that's expected as well. Oops, sorry, I'm just gotta fix this. One moment. I see I'm cutting out a bit here. Let me just fix my audio. I apologize about that. The next error that an operator may see as well is the operation of assigning the correct lot numbers that are being shipped out as well. So that goes for lot numbers as well as serial numbers that the operator is picking. If it doesn't match what is assigned on the sales order line, riteSCAN is going to display that error message to prevent the operator from picking the incorrect lot number. A lot of companies have strict guidelines around what lot numbers can be sent to what customers and things like that. And you want to keep that data integrity that is in your ERP system by making sure that the correct lot numbers are being shipped out, and keep that data visibility throughout your system from start to the end, where the shipment ends with the customer as well. One of the other big ones that we want to prevent is overpicking, as well as underpicking. So riteSCAN also has error messages in place that are going to help prevent an operator from picking the incorrect quantities when they're out on the floor. We want to validate that the pickers are picking the correct quantity, that they're not underpicking what's expected to be shipped, as well as keeping them from overpicking. So if an operator accidentally types in 100 when they actually were supposed to be shipping 10, riteSCAN is going to stop and prevent that error before it gets to the ERP system, before it gets to the customer, to make sure that the correct quantities are ensured to the customer as well. So these are all kind of some of the error messages that are really going to keep that data integrity and increase your operator's accuracy out on the shop floor through the use of barcodes and prevention of errors, not allowing these things to go through downstream. So let's talk about the different methods that riteSCAN can really provide from a picking perspective. riteSCAN really provides 3 different methods that a lot of customers are using for the picking processes within their current Syspro processes. Those 3 methods are going to be the typical sales order picking. So if you're using delivery notes, there's also going to be the sales order reserve. So if you guys are using reserve in your modules, as well as dispatch. So let's start with sales order. Really what the sales order processing is when your operators are putting it into that ship or back order column. If you're using reserve, all the allocations are actually going to be reserved against the sales order ahead of time, which is also supported by the new riteSCAN enhancements, as well as the ability to use dispatch note processing. So these enhancements really to the sales order picking process with riteSCAN make it even easier for riteSCAN to drop right into your processes that you may be using today for performing those sales order pickings out on this warehouse floor as well. So we're going to dive in a little bit deeper to kind of walk through each of these scenarios and how that pertains to the riteSCAN product and what that process flow looks like out on the warehouse floor. So typical scenario, we're going to look at the sales order process here. When the order comes in, it's going to be received and entered into Syspro. So your customer service is going to allocate that available stock to either ship or back order as they're entering that order into Syspro. Once it's entered into Syspro, there's a mechanism to release the order to the warehouse to go ahead and pick these items. A lot of times this is facilitated by printing a pick slip, and they'll also have this pick slip typically barcoded, so that printed slip is sent out to the warehouse floor, which is really what the trigger to go ahead and pick those items and move them into the next steps of the process. So once they're out into the warehouse, the operator is going to either scan or look up the available orders to pick using riteSCAN. Now, just the thing to note at this time, only the items that are in the ship column are available to pick in this process. So for back orders, for example, if the operator, if there is back order on the order, the operator can release that back order stock, to the ship column at that time as well, and then go ahead and pick the full quantity that's expected at that time as well. So riteSCAN operator will then go ahead and pick those lines. When they're picking each of the lines, they're going to validate the bins, lots, and serials for whatever applies. If you're a multi-bin company, you're going to validate the bins. If it's a lot traceable item, you're going to validate the lots. So riteSCAN's always smart enough to convert that information to know what information is required from the operator to proceed with picking that line. The other ability is they're also able to do partial picks and then come back and finish that later. So for example, if an operator is in the middle of an order and has to go fulfill a different order because of something that changed in priority, they can then come back to their previous order later on and finish up and pick up exactly where they left off with the order. So also, as an order is being picked, a custom form field in Syspro can be updated by riteSCAN to show that picker's information, to see exactly who is in the process of picking this order and giving that visibility into the Syspro system and your customer service to see what's going on with this order at this time as well. So there's a number of different enhancements that really provide an extra step of functionality to increase the order picking process. So once they go ahead and pick all those lines, they're going to stage the order for shipment. And then once all of the lines are fully picked, the operator is going to complete the order. And what completing the order is going to do is allow the ability to update the order status in Syspro. So as the operator completes that order in riteSCAN, it's going to update that status to whatever you configure within your system, whether it's moving it to a status 8 at that time or whether it's moving it to a status 4. You can set the system up to mimic what your process flow should look like with all of your systems that are currently in place as well. So now that we've taken a look at the typical sales order model, let's go one step further and take a look at the sales order reserve method. And I want to talk about the points that are slightly different from previously. There's a lot of overlap with these. However, there are a few differentiators that are key for how riteSCAN works with Syspro within this process as well. So the same process is going to follow, that the operator is going to, or the customer service is going to enter that order into Syspro. However, the differentiator is when they enter that order, they're going to allocate the stock to the reserve column or the back order column as they enter it into Syspro if they're using the reserve module for sales orders. So once that process takes place, the order is going to be released to the warehouse, and this can typically be facilitated with a print pick slip or some other mechanism as well. And then the operator is going to scan or look up the available orders in riteSCAN. For back orders, if there's back order, the operator can release the quantity on back order to the reserve column at that time. And now the one thing to note that's a little bit different than what we previously discussed earlier is the operator is going to be picking the items that are in the reserve column. So they're picking the items from reserve, and then once they complete the order, we're going to move that into the ship column. So the operator is going to pick the items, all of the lines validating the bins, lots, and serials just as before, as well as having the ability to do partial picks and update that custom form field with visibility for who the picker is. Once the operator is done, has staged all the materials, what they're going to do is complete the order. And here's where it changes a little bit as well. So we are going to update the order status just as we did previously, but as the operator completes that order, we're going to take all of the items that they picked from reserve, and those items are going to be now moved into the ship column, deallocating them from inventory at that time. So it's one little extra step that riteSCAN performs with Syspro when completing that order process within the riteSCAN order process with Reserve. So the next thing we're going to take a look at is the dispatch note method. So if you work with dispatch notes, it's very similar. The biggest differentiator with dispatch notes is if you're doing the partial order processing. So for example, if you're just shipping out, 3 lines on this date, and then you're going to wait a month to ship out the next lines. So that's where dispatch notes really comes into play here. So when the sales order is received, the operator is going to enter that into Syspro, and then the customer service is going to allocate that stock to ship or back order, and then they're going to create that dispatch. So once they create that dispatch, that is going to dispatch the lines associated with it and release that to the warehouse. So that release process can be facilitated with printing the dispatch note to allow warehouse to know that this is ready to be picked. And one of the limitations that I just want to talk a little bit about is through the business objects and how riteSCAN has handled this process. So riteSCAN actually utilizes a custom form field in Syspro to update that order status. So once it's released to the warehouse, there's going to be a custom form field that's able to be set up in Syspro to provide visibility into the warehouse status of this dispatch note. So as the operator scans or looks up the order within the Syspro system, they're going to see one of 3 fields, or one of 3 options that the status is. It's not started, it's in process, so which is picking, or it's completed. So that's going to be updated within the Syspro system to provide that visibility of the order status for dispatch notes. So the operator is going to then scan and look up that order. As they do that and begin picking on the order, it's going to update the status to in process so that they're picking all of the available lines within that dispatch note, and they're going to be picking all the lines that are dispatched and in the ship column. So that's what the operator is going to be picking against at this point. The operator is still going to go through the process of validating the bins, lots, and serials that they're picking for this dispatch note as well, and they do have the ability to do the partial picks just as well as before. So once they're done going through that, they're going to stage all the items for shipment and complete the order. So once they complete the order, that status within Syspro with the custom form field will then be updated to complete. And once that's complete, it's going to disallow the operator from repicking against that order and allow it to view that complete status. There also are ways and mechanisms to set up your Syspro system to consume that complete custom form field to move your dispatch note into the next operational steps that you would like to take it to as well. So those are kind of the 3 different methods for how you can implement the new sales order picking enhancements into your operations for what you may be doing today as well. So let's kind of walk through what an operator would see from a riteSCAN perspective. So even though we talked about these 3 different methods, from a riteSCAN perspective, the workflow to the operator is going to be very similar no matter which method you set up and configure with the riteSCAN system. So the first step in the process, the operator is going to scan or look up the order. So you're going to notice that they can still scan the order number in. If you're using barcodes, they can scan that right into the system, or they also can use this little clipboard to browse the available orders. So that clipboard is going to give you visibility into showing you what orders are available to pick, and you can configure your riteSCAN system to view only certain order statuses or what you want the operators to be able to pick. They can sort and filter this list down to exactly what they're looking to pick. So whether you wanted to sort by customer or dates that they're supposed to be shipped by, you can sort and filter this list to really give your operators what they need to see in this screen and what is most relevant. So once they pull up an order, so if they pick an order from the list, they're going to then see all of the lines for this order that they can pick at that time. So if there is back order on the order, they're able to see this back order button that will be visible. This is a setting that can be set up to in the admin to allow operators to release back order or not release back order. So don't worry, you can configure your system. You don't have to allow your operators to view that back order button. However, if they select that back order button when there's order, they can then release the free quantity if there is free stock available at that time prior to picking the order, and go ahead and release that free quantity into the ship column and pick it against the order. So that's a nice little feature to kind of streamline the process for things as well. So once they go ahead and begin picking the order, they're going to scan the stock code that they're picking, and then they will be prompted to validate the information that's associated with that line. So for example, when they're picking lot 100, they're going to enter in the bin information that they're picking it from. They're going to enter the lot that they're picking and then select the quantity. If you are using the pallet tracking modules within riteSCAN, they could also then assign the pallet that they're moving these items to at this time as well, staging that pallet for this sales order. So that's if you are using the pallet management utility within riteSCAN. So once they go ahead and pick all of the lines, what their next step they're going to want to do is actually complete the order. So to complete the order, that's only going to be available once they have completed picking all of the lines for this order. And once they select that complete, it's going to update that status in Syspro. So for example, in this case, I have my system configured to update the status to ready to invoice, or a status 8 in Syspro upon completion. So once I've completed this order, I can then view in the Syspro system that it's ready to invoice, and it has updated that status as well. All right, so now that we've kind of talked through all of the different processes, let's kind of go through the settings and how that configuration process can be set up for your system to really flow right into your processes and your preferences that you would set up within your sales order picking module. So you can set up a variety of settings in riteSCAN, and this can be at the operator level for all operators or specific operators within your system as well. The first setting we're going to take a look at is the ability to select the order type processing. So as we talked about earlier, there's the three methods. Are we doing the typical sales order picking, sales order reserve, or dispatch notes? So you can select that, which gives you different options based on that selection. So once we go in, you're also going to have the ability to enter in your Syspro custom form field. So if you want to set up a custom form field on your sales order to view the user information for who is picking that, you can enter that custom form field in here, and then riteSCAN is going to update that with the operator who is picking the order, so you have that visibility in the Syspro system as well. You can also update the Pic Statuses that are available. So if you want your operators to only be able to pick status 1s, or if you want them to be able to pick status 1s and 4s, you can configure your system to do that as well. You can also change the status that you would like to put it to upon completion. So for example, I would like my system to update it to ready to invoice upon completing the order. You are also able to set up the system to update the status of the order as it begins to be picked. So for example, if I want the status to be updated to a 4 as soon as someone starts to pick the order, that'll give that visibility into the Syspro system that it's in process as well. So those are just some of the few settings. You can also default the quantities, as I was kind of talking about earlier. You can default the quantity to 0, 1, or the outstanding quantity. So whatever fits your guys' processes. Some people like to default it to 0, which requires the operator to enter a number at that time, or scan a number in at that time, or they like to just leave it at the outstanding quantity, because 95% of the time the operator is going to be using that outstanding quantity as the quantity that's being picked. So whatever fits your guys' operational flow, as well as your processes out there. So the validation takes place in here as well. So if you want to validate the bins, lots, and serials against orders as they're picking, you can set up those validation rules within the riteSCAN system as well. So lots of different functions and features that are going to really help you kind of tailor this sales order picking process directly to your process flows, and really drop it right into what would fit your guys' needs for that picking process to increase your accuracy and your efficiency. So now that we've kind of taken a look at the process from start to finish, let's go in. We're going to actually do a demo of this and take a look at what this looks like in riteSCAN as well. So give me just a second here as I transition the screen We're going to get this over to the actual product. Just a moment. All right. So now we're going to log into the riteSCAN system. I'm going to log in here quickly. Let me share my screen. I better do that. All right, so I'm going to log in with my credentials into riteSCAN. And now I'm going to be talking about what you guys would see in the latest enhanced version. So you'll now notice in this version, there's going to be an extra tab down here called Picking. So we're going to go to that Picking tab and we're going to try the new order picking module that includes all of these enhancements that we were discussing. So what I can do then at that point, I apologize, there's going to be a beep here. At that point, I can browse the available orders by selecting this clipboard. So for example, if I want to see just my order status ones, or if I want to filter it down to just by a customer. So if you want operators to go and pick multiple orders for a single customer, they can get access into all of those available orders and actually pick directly from this list. So it gives them that visibility into having that browse capability, bringing them one step closer towards that paperless environment if you'd like to get to that point. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually scan the order. Give me just a second here. So we're going to go ahead and scan the order that we're wanting to pick. It's going to bring up all of the available lines at this time. I can sort and filter this field. So for example, if I wanted to sort by bin location to provide a more efficient workflow for how an operator may go through my pick list, you could also do it by line or quantity or lot numbers, however you want to sort and filter this list for your operators. We're then going to go ahead and scan the first stock code in my list. You're going to be noticed that they're prompted to enter that bin information, so they could scan or enter this if you have your pallet racking. Oops, I scanned the wrong barcode. If you have your pallet racking already labeled with that information, you can do it right from there and just scan the pallet racking as they're picking it. Then we're going to enter our quantity, so the quantity that we're wanting to pick at this time. If I'm using the pallet tracking module, as I talked about earlier, I could select the pallet that I want to put this to. So if I'm staging my items onto a pallet, I could generate a new pallet ID tag at this time and then pick those items. So as soon as I pick those items, it's actually going to go out of my queue of items to pick, kind of walking that operator through the workflow. So let's go ahead and pick the next line stock code here. You're going to notice that I scanned the A102, which actually isn't a line. So the operator is going to be warned that this item isn't found on the order, keeping that error validation in process to make sure that they're picking the correct items. So let's go ahead and actually scan the correct stock code at this point. We can select the bin location that we're picking it from. We're going to pick it from bin location Z here. And then we can put in the quantity that we want to pick. You're going to notice that I entered excessive quantity, so I'm not able to actually pick. It's going to keep that warning process in place and make sure that my operators are picking the correct quantity. Go ahead and enter the actual correct quantity and pick that. So now let's go ahead and pick an actual lot traceable item. So I'm going to pick this lot 100 here, and you're going to notice that now there's actually an extra field on the screen. riteSCAN is always keeping that validation process in place to make sure that you're collecting the information that is associated with the actual process here. So let's go ahead. We're going to pick our bin location that we're pulling it from. Select the lot number. So I'm going to scan my lot number that I'm picking, and then go ahead and pick that quantity. Oops, it's that validation again. I got to scan my right stock codes. All right, go ahead and pick that. And now that all the lines are actually completed and picked out of the screen here, you're going to notice that I can now have access to select this complete flag. So as soon as I select this complete, it's going to post that transaction to Syspro and update the status of the order at that time. I can also print labels at this time. If I wanted to print labels upon each pick, I could do that as well. You can configure your system however it fits your process. So if operators are picking items and labeling them as they're picking, they could print a label at that point or just print information at the very end with a consolidated list of the items picked. All right, so now that we've kind of went through the demo of the product, let's jump back into the PowerPoint presentation here. Give me just a second as I transition back. All right. So all of these enhancements are available in version 6.46.0. So if anybody's interested in updating or testing these enhancements, feel free to reach out to our support team. We can definitely help you with that upgrade process to get you upgraded to the latest version of riteSCAN and allow you to test out these new enhancements and see how they may be able to be implemented into your picking process as well. You'll also notice that there's a handout that's available for download. It should be under a little handout section for the GoToMeeting, which is going to cover these latest enhancements to sales order picking as well for your review. So just to kind of summarize what we've talked about, we've changed the riteSCAN administration module to allow you to configure riteSCAN to drop more seamlessly into our users' existing sales order picking processes without having to customize the product or make significant changes to your processes. Now you can implement it right into what you're doing today. So as you've just seen, the sales order picking along with sales order reserve and dispatch notes enhancements really provide a picking workflow that's going to fit our users' business processes even better than it did before. It's also going to set up that validation of bins, lots, and serials, as well as quantities to make sure that your customers are ensured with getting the correct products that they're expected, as well as keeping that data integrity between all of your systems with Syspro as well, making sure that that's all intact and efficient. So it's also going to allow you to set up separate statuses for picking line items and allow you to work through that workflow with Syspro as well. The ability to do partial picks without having to complete the order. So for example, if an operator begins picking an order, it comes to lunch break, so they drop the order, they can come back and complete picking right where they left off with that order. So there's no problems with having to go in between and do partial picks. You can also have multiple people picking on an order and things like that as they're going through this. With the browse capabilities, it also allows you to get one step closer towards that paperless picking environment and allow your operators the data and information that they need to do their job out in the warehouse to fulfill these picking processes and shipments to your customers. Being able to sort the line items by bins, sales orders, or numbers is really going to help your operators do that and get the information that they need most in front of them at that time and make it most effective for them to perform these picking processes out in the warehouse. They also have new printing options which allow you to print as you're picking. So each time you're picking a line, you could print labels at that time if you had to relabel product with different quantities or things like that. Or you can just print at the end of the process to print out a list of all of the items picked or anything like that. So you should see that handout, as I said earlier, in the handouts window, and you can download that for your review as well. So that really kind of covers everything with the riteSCAN sales order picking enhancements. So what I'd like to do now is actually open it up for questions.
Okay, Ryan, it looks like the first question we have here relates to printing. Can riteSCAN print the delivery note?
So riteSCAN can't print the delivery note. Typically that is printed prior to the process of picking. It can print the picked items for a delivery note or for the sales order and print that information upon completion of the print picking process. If you really wanted to get creative through the custom form fields and things like that, there can be triggers and stuff set up within your Syspro system to automate that printing process as well. So there are some creative tactics that you can use with Syspro in conjunction with riteSCAN to complete things like that if that's what you're looking to accomplish. Very good question though.
All right. The next question relates to the changes that we've made to sales order picking. How is the new sales order picking module different from the old sales order picking prior to version 46?
So the real differences between this module is previously in the old version of picking. When you're using the typical sales order picking, what riteSCAN did is we took the items that were previously in the ship column, temporarily moving them into backorder, which allowed for your operators to go through that workflow to pick those items back into ship. So with the new enhancements to riteSCAN, we've created our own separate database information that is going to validate the items that are picked on the order with our own database structure separately to allow for just picking those shipped items and not affecting any of your Syspro inventory within those processes. So that's really what the big differentiator is between those. It's moving things from back order to ship at that time.
Okay. All right. This relates to more to operator settings. Can I limit operators from performing back order releases?
Yes. So within the settings of the admin utility, you can set up the sales order picking process to allow certain operators to have access to perform that back order release process, or if you want to disallow all of your operators from that, you can set that up and configure it within the sales order picking settings as well. Yep.
Okay. The next question is an operator able to complete an order that is not fully picked?
So the way that riteSCAN works is it requires the operators to fully pick the order because Syspro has already moved those items into the ship column. So we want to keep that data integrity with the Syspro system at that time. So it does require that an operator fully completes picking an order before completing that order within the Syspro system to keep that inventory levels against Syspro intact as well and make sure that the full quantities are being shipped to their customers.
Okay. All right. One other question here. Can dispatch note status be updated in Syspro?
Yeah, so the way that it works, there's a limitation with the E.NET business object. So what riteSCAN has really developed is the ability to utilize a custom form field within the dispatch to update that status, which will provide you the visibility into where a dispatch note is within your process. So you're able to still get that visibility through a custom form field, but it's not directly updating the status of the dispatch note. However, there are some bars that we're able to create workarounds through triggers off of that dispatch note as well, or off of that custom form field, I apologize, to update the order status within their Syspro system based on the order status of that custom form field as well. So there are definitely ways to set that up and configure your system.
Okay, that looks like that's the end of our questions.
Sue, I see there's one more in there. I don't believe I answered yet. I apologize if I'm repeating myself. The question is the information available for download? So yes, I believe that the information is available for download. You can download it from the handout to get the list of this latest releases. There are also release notes on our support portal. If you're registered with our support portal, you can go in and access that information through there. If not, feel free to send a message to riteSCAN@ritesoft.com, and we can definitely get you whatever information you're looking for, or if you have questions regarding this further, feel free to reach out to us. We'd be glad to help you guys in getting this configured and getting you using these latest enhancements to the riteSCAN product as well. So let me switch my slide. If you guys have any other questions as well or want to talk more about your business processes and how this may fit into your processes, definitely feel free to reach out to me. I'd be glad to review your business processes and talk further about how this can drop into your operations to really create a more effective picking process. Or if you have questions about other modules that you're looking to use within the riteSCAN product, feel free to reach out to me and we can definitely discuss that and hopefully get you implemented and using as much of the product as possible. So I want to thank you all for joining us today, and if anything comes up, feel free to reach out to me. I appreciate your guys' time, and have a great rest of the week.